Hey everyone. So we're gonna try to get back into the habit of doing these every so often. These little behind the scene looks at what just whatever you guys want to see, how the videos were made, how certain things were done. In this case, a couple of people, namely Eddie and PyDot, wanted to know more about how the laser bit was done in the video. This bit here.
Yeah, I can.
It was certainly a challenge. I can understand the curiosity there. I wanted it to be a sort of mix of two different kinds of energy. 2012 dubstep intro energy, of like really overly dramatic 3D After Effects filters and shit, and just, modern deep fried memes. As an example here, I've gone ahead and made a funny meme. There's only a few key things that need to be done. Essentially, your goal is to make it look as bad as possible. You want to emphasize the appearance of it being shared by way too many people and websites and meme things, and a bunch of filters have been applied unnecessarily, and it's just that you can hardly recognize the original image anymore. And the way to do that is by applying a bunch of filters such as contrast, a warming filter, although that's subtle. You can choose not to do that. Here's a big one, pasteurizing. What pasteurizing does is it basically removes the image so that it can only use a certain amount of colors rather than the entire color gamut of however million colors there are. Instead, you just have like 10 or something. And you can dynamically adjust that in Photoshop. So like now I want there to be more color, or I want there to be like no color. But I felt like that was a bit strong for this, so somewhere around there is okay. A vignette. But here's like the secret ingredient to making it really look authentically shit. And you want to export it as a JPEG with the lowest quality possible, so that the file is just absolutely crushed during the export. Then you want to import it back into Photoshop and then export it again at an equally low rate. And what it's going to do is it's going to just continuously over and over again absolutely decimate the quality of the image. And after that's done a few times, you can also add a few more filters on, maybe some more pasteurization. And eventually what you're going to end up is something like this. You can also add sharpening. That's a pretty good one. I like to add sharpening after the image is already compressed to hell, because you get some really nasty artifacting, like right around like here, for example. You can see how the image was compressed, and then the artifacts of the compression were picked up by the sharpening and then like emphasized, so it looks even worse. Pretty straightforward in picture form, but if you want to try to do it with video, it becomes a lot more complex. So to start off, here's just the animation by itself before any effects were applied, straight in Flash.
Yeah, I can.
Not the most exciting thing ever. I don't know if I had a plan for this, honestly. I think it was just a placeholder at the time. Where the real magic happened was in After Effects. So after this was done in Premiere, after those basic movements were done, I exported that video in very low quality, naturally, and then imported it into After Effects. And this is where all of the effects really come into play here. It's really the same, more or less, as what we saw with the Photoshop. So if I can find these, there's a bunch of adjustment layers. I won't go into too much detail here because it kind of gets complex at some parts. But it's layered in such a way that certain elements will always be displayed and certain ones are kind of hidden behind. Like, for example, there's this is multiple versions of the same video layered on top of each other with different effects applied to give it a certain effect. And the one in the center here is very, very, very red. And I applied a mask with a very heavy feathering effect to sort of let it fade back into having color around the sides. So the center looks particularly just damaged and gross and awful. And then it just sort of fades into regular awful as you reach the edges of the screen. The laser effect I'm actually pretty happy with. That's a lightsaber extension that was made by someone. I forget exactly. Yeah, look at that. That's what the laser itself looks like prior to getting fucked around with. Here's another work in progress version of some of the effects prior to having that laser put in. Really is night and day. Looks like there's a little bit of a film grain I threw in there as well, just to give it some extra gnarly texture quality. Just really just ruin it. There's another Pasteurize filter on this, which I slowly increased as the video goes on, which has a pretty funny effect towards the end, I think. This little circular beam in the middle here is caused by just a regular old lens flare tied to an adjustment layer. But yeah, I mean, that's the long and short of it. And then, of course, whenever you export it for YouTube, some more quality is lost, which is great. So yeah, it's really just a matter of tweaking all of these different filters, these different tools at your disposal, and getting them just right. It's a lot of trial and error, but the results, I think, are great. If you want me to go into more detail, I'm happy to do that. Just leave a comment if you want to know, like, a more specific technical aspect of how some of this was done, or if you just want to know the behind the scenes of anything, how any of this video was made, just let me know.